a soldier in a burning city, and she was the girl he saved from the wreckage. He forgot her face. She never forgot his. Now fate brings them together on a fragile world where peace hangs by a thread. Until one forgotten act of heroism wakes something ancient beneath the surface. This isn't just a reunion. It's the moment history remembers, or war begins again. If you are new here, then please subscribe this channel and show thumbs up by liking the video. Let's move toward wonderful story. The shuttle groaned like an old man getting out of bed as it entered the atmosphere of Maris. Commander Jalen Miles sat stiffly in his seat, gripping the armrest as the ship rattled beneath him. Outside the window, the clouds parted to reveal a planet that looked as if it had been stitched back together after being torn apart. Jagged hills rolled across the horizon, and clusters of shining domes stood like bubbles over the remains of once broken cities. There was beauty, but it was the tired kind, the kind that comes after fire and ruin. Jalen had been on dozens of diplomatic missions before, but none had made his stomach twist like this one. The planet had only recently signed a fragile peace agreement, and his job was to ensure that it held. What should have been a formality felt more like walking into a room filled with sharp objects and fake smiles. He rubbed his temple and muttered under his breath, "This better not end with someone throwing a chair." The shuttle pilot, a voice too calm for the state of the ship, called back, "Brace for landing. And Commander, try not to scream this time." "I wasn't screaming," Jalen replied. "I was expressing deep professional concern." The shuttle hit the landing pad hard enough to rattle his teeth. Something clanked loudly beneath the floor, and Jalen wondered if a piece of the engine had just given up entirely. With a sigh, he stood up, smoothed out his wrinkled uniform, and knocked his head on a low panel above him. "Welcome to diplomacy," he mumbled, stepping off the shuttle and into the warm, dusty air of Maris. The light had a faint reddish tint, like the air still carried memories of fire. Standing nearby was a group of armored guards, their weapons slung across their backs, their faces calm but unreadable. At the front was a tall figure, a woman wearing deep blue armor with silver patterns along her shoulders and arms. Her black hair was tied back in a pattern of loops and knots, and her eyes, sharp and still, focused directly on him. Jalen took a step forward, resisting the urge to straighten his collar again. "Commander Jalen Miles, Earth Delegation," he announced, forcing his voice into something close to confidence. The woman didn't move at first. She studied him, her expression unreadable. Then, finally, she tilted her head slightly and said, "You've aged." Jalen blinked. "Yes. I found it's one of the side effects of staying alive." She stepped forward, her boots making a soft crunch on the gravel. "You are not as I remembered." Jalen raised an eyebrow. "That's a diplomatic way of saying I look worse than expected." She didn't smile, but something near her mouth twitched like a shadow of one. "I am Commander Senyatreli of Maris. I'll be your escort and, if necessary, your arresting officer." "Great," Jalen said. Exactly the kind of welcome they promised in the travel brochure. One of the guards behind her coughed, barely hiding a laugh. Senya ignored it and turned sharply. "Come. Your accommodations await." They walked side by side along a path made of glass, laid over a foundation of cracked stone. Beneath their feet, faint lines of light pulsed. Neural networks, Jalen guessed, still carrying information through the ground like veins in a recovering body. Around them, the city was a mix of rebirth and reminder. New buildings grew out of the remains of old ones. Glowing vines crawled up concrete skeletons. They passed a statue made of hard light. It showed a soldier mid-jump, one hand raised, the other holding a flag. As they walked by, the image flickered and froze with the soldier's face twisted in what looked like a sneeze. "Are all your monuments programmed for comedy?" Jalen asked. Senya's expression didn't change, but he caught a flicker in her eye. Inside the dome that served as diplomatic housing, a multi-armed robot offered him snacks that moved a little too much for his liking. He reached for a small purple one that hissed. "They're traditional," Senya said. "So was bloodletting," he replied, placing it back gently. And yet we moved on. The day moved quickly. Introductions, formalities, and a short speech about unity that earned polite applause and a few not-so-polite yawns. Through it all, Senya stood to the side, arms folded, watching him like a puzzle missing one piece. When the room cleared, she stepped closer. "I would speak with you," she said. "Privately." Jalen hesitated, then gestured toward a quiet hallway. "Only if it's not one of those polite interrogation rooms." "No," she said. "Not polite." They walked in silence. The hallway curved and glowed faintly with embedded lights, casting a soft sheen over the walls. Jalen could feel something strange humming beneath the quiet, a kind of invisible pressure. Finally, they stopped in a room with tall glass windows. The view showed the city stretching toward the horizon, where rebuilt towers stood like spires growing from ash. Senya turned to him slowly. Her voice was lower now, less clipped. "Do you remember a city called Alvin Point?" Jalen frowned. 15 years ago? That was a war zone. I was just a soldier back then. There was a girl, Senya said, trapped under a fallen drone. A boy pulled her free. He was limping, bleeding. Something stirred deep in Jalen's memory. A night full of smoke. Sparks. A hand reaching out. She took a step closer, her eyes locked on his. "Is that you?" she asked softly. "You were the one who saved me." Jalen opened his mouth, then closed it again. He let out a slow breath and said, "That explains the intense staring. I thought maybe I had something on my face." For the first time, she smiled, just a little. But it changed everything. The sun over Maris hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the ground as Commander Jalen Miles followed Commander Senya Traley through the city's winding paths. The light had a soft orange tint, making everything look like it had been brushed with flame. Jalen kept pace beside her, his eyes drifting over the rebuilt structures, the glowing data lines beneath the streets, and the silent statues of soldiers, standing tall at intersections. The air was warm, calm, but the silence between them carried a weight that made it hard to breathe. They didn't speak for a while, just walked. The city of Virene, one of the first rebuilt capitals, looked alive on the surface. Trees growing beside smooth steel towers, birds circling domed gardens, children's laughter echoing faintly from somewhere distant. But under that, there was something else. Jalen could feel it. Maybe it was just memory clinging to the walls, or maybe it was the way Senya's shoulders were stiff with something unsaid. Finally, he broke the silence. "You remembered that night for 15 years? "I didn't choose to," she replied. Her voice wasn't sharp, but it held something harder than steel. "Memories like that don't ask for permission. They stay because they're burned in." Jalen nodded slowly. He didn't remember her face. He wished he did. But that night, the one she spoke of, had been chaos. He remembered fire, screams, a child's hand reaching through twisted metal, and the feeling that if he didn't act, someone would die. He hadn't thought of himself as a hero. He was just doing the only thing that made sense at the time. They passed another statue, this one frozen mid-leap, sword raised, face brave, but the projection flickered and showed a glitch, making the heroic expression look confused, almost silly. Jalen tilted his head and asked, "Was that one supposed to look like it just forgot its password?" Senya glanced at it without breaking, tried. "The software's old, we haven't gotten around to fixing it." "It's charming," Jalen said, trying to bring a bit of lightness. "Makes your military monuments feel approachable." Her mouth twitched, not quite a smile, but close. "I doubt that was the goal." They arrived at a quiet park, high, on a hill that overlooked most of the city. Soft glass steps led them to a round bench set beneath a dome of woven lights. From here, the skyline stretched wide, the tower shimmering in the distance, touched by the last rays of daylight. Senya sat first. Jalen joined her, still feeling unsure of what exactly they were doing there. She looked forward, not at him. "I thought you were a ghost," she said after a long moment. something my mind invented. I was so young. It didn't seem real, that someone would stop in all that fire and carry me out. I didn't carry you, Jalen said gently. I dragged you. You were small, but I was bleeding. My leg was a mess. I thought we'd both die before we made it out. But we didn't. No, he said. We didn't. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was full, deep. Senya turned to him now, her face softer than before. I became a soldier because of that night, she said. Not out of revenge. I wasn't angry. I was determined. I thought, if I can make someone feel the way I did, saved, important, seen, then maybe everything I went through had a purpose. Jalen looked at her, really looked. There was no anger in her, no bitterness, only strength and a deep, silent hope that she didn't seem ready to show to the world. I was just trying to do the right thing, he said. I didn't expect to be remembered. That's the thing, she said quietly. The ones who don't expect to be remembered are the ones we never forget. The sky above them deepened into a soft purple as the first stars began to show. Jalen leaned back slightly, letting his eyes follow the tiny blinking lights of a patrol drone moving silently overhead. He felt the weight in his chest lighten a little. I can't say I'm the same person I was back then, he said. Too many battles, too many mistakes. You're still the one who stopped to help a scared girl, she replied. That hasn't changed. A faint beep interrupted their quiet. Senya tapped her wrist device. A red light blinked softly. Her face tightened. What is it? Jalen asked. There was an energy spike in the southern district, she said. Could be a glitch or not. He sighed. Peace never rests long, does it? No, she replied, standing. It's a fragile thing, easy to talk about, hard to hold. They walked back together, faster now, the soft peace of the park fading behind them. But something had shifted between them. Not just the tension easing, but something deeper. An old bond, once forgotten, now remembered. Not a full trust yet, but a start. As they neared the dome housing, Jalen glanced at her and said, If this turns into another firefight, I just want it known. I didn't bring my running shoes. Senya didn't laugh, but her reply was dry. Don't worry, I'll drag you if I have to. He smiled at that. And though the shadows of the city still whispered of fire, something new had begun to stir, something stronger than memory. Something like healing. The next morning came with a gentle pink sky over Maris, the kind of soft light that made the world look quiet, even if it wasn't. Commander Jalen Miles stood near the edge of the dome garden, watching strange birds sweep across the skyline. The city still hummed beneath him, its glowing paths pulsing with life. But his mind wasn't on the view. He kept thinking about Senya's words from the night before, about how she remembered him all these years. It didn't seem possible. He hadn't thought of himself as anyone special back then, just another soldier doing what he could in a terrible situation. And yet, to her, he had been everything. Senya arrived without a sound. She moved like someone used to going unnoticed, when she wanted to. Her face was unreadable again, but her eyes were tired in a way that only came from thinking too much for too long. She stood beside him, hands behind her back, looking out at the same horizon. There's a room we can use, she said quietly. It's away from the others. Jalen didn't ask why. He just followed. They walked in silence down a narrow corridor with walls that shimmered faintly, as if coated in mist. The lights flickered gently like candle flames under glass. The air was cool and carried the faint scent of citrus. It was the kind of space built for quiet conversations, the kind where secrets didn't echo too loudly. The room they entered was shaped like a half circle, with a wide window facing the eastern side of the city. A large map floated in the air, in front of them, showing the southern border where the latest energy spike had been detected. But neither of them looked at it. Senya turned to him. For a moment, she didn't speak. Then, finally, she said, All this time, I never knew your Name. I had your face in my mind the way it looked that night, covered in ash, your leg bleeding, eyes filled with fear and something else. But no name. You vanished before I could ask. I didn't think anyone would remember me, Jalen said softly. Especially not after everything, she nodded. I thought I'd made you up, a story my mind created to survive. But then yesterday when I saw you, something clicked. I knew. It was you. He didn't know what to say. He had been thanked before, praised for speeches, decorated, for missions, but nothing felt like this. It wasn't praise, it was something more personal, more fragile. I used to imagine what kind of person you grew up to be, Senya continued. In my mind, you were always this bold, strong figure, not afraid of anything. But then I met the real you. She paused, then added, You're softer than I expected. Jalen laughed quietly. War has a way of shaving off the sharp parts. Senya stepped closer, and this time her voice was different, less like a soldier. You saved me, Jalen. You gave me a future. And I've spent my whole life trying to live in a way that would make that moment matter. I joined the Peace Corps at 17, trained under 3 different factions, spent years learning to negotiate with people who didn't even speak the same language. I built myself into something I hoped would help others the way you helped me. He looked at her carefully. You've done more than I ever could. I didn't do it alone, she replied. I had a beginning. That beginning was you. Jalen let that sit between them for a while. Outside the window, the wind stirred the tops of towers. The sky shifted from pink to blue. I never saw myself as a hero, he said finally. That day I just saw someone who needed help. I didn't think, I just moved. And after it all ended, I never even knew what happened to you. I was found by a rescue team an hour later, Senya said. Carried to a shelter, recovered. I told people about the boy who saved me, but no one believed me. They thought, I imagined you. A kind stranger in a burning city. It was easier for them to think of it that way. I'm sorry, he said. And he meant it. You deserve to be believed, she shrugged. Belief came later. When I realized I didn't need others to confirm what I knew. He smiled at that. You always sound so sure of yourself. I'm not, she admitted. But I try. Another silence passed between them, but this one felt like something settling into place. Senya turned her attention to the floating map, her eyes scanning the blinking red markers near the border. There's something happening out there, she said. Something that could break this fragile peace. I don't think it's a direct attack, not yet. But it's a warning. Jalen studied the projection. What do you want me to do? Nothing. Official, she said. You're not here as a soldier. But I wanted you to know, I wanted you to understand how much is at risk. He nodded. I do. She looked back at him. Thank you, Jalen. Not just for saving me then, for being here now. He didn't answer with words. He just placed a hand on the edge of the map, letting the light shine softly on his fingers. And for the first time in many years, he felt like maybe, just maybe, his past had meant something after all. The wind over Maris carried a sharpness that hadn't been there the day before. It wasn't cold, just unsettled, like the planet itself was holding its breath. Commander Jalen Miles stood with Commander Senya Traley on the edge of a transport platform, watching as a small team of security drones lifted off and disappeared into the pale morning sky. Their destination was the southern border zone, where the strange energy signals had been rising. The map had shown flickers of movement, heat without origin, whispers in the data stream. Senya had said it might be nothing, but her tone had suggested otherwise. They rode a quiet shuttle to a nearby command center built into the hillside. The inside smelled of metal and faint citrus like everything else on Maris. Large screens showed layers of information, troop placements, weather shifts, and something more hidden, pockets of static like bruises on a clean surface. Jalen studied one of the displays, watching as a red glow pulsed slowly in the lower corner. The pulse was steady, almost like a heartbeat. You really think this is a prelude to war? He asked. I think peace doesn't break in one loud moment, Senya replied. It cracks in quiet places, then spreads. Jalen nodded, letting the words settle. He didn't wear a weapon. He wasn't here to fight. But the tension in the air reminded him too much of battlefields, of the silence before the first shot. Later that day, they visited the Southern District in person. The area had once been a front line, then a recovery zone. Now it looked halfway between both, clean walkways beside damaged walls, gardens growing through rubble. There were people here, trying to live normal lives, but even the children played, quietly. The air buzzed faintly with the hum of old machines still buried beneath the ground. As they walked, Senya's expression tightened. She didn't speak much, only gave short nods to the locals who recognized her. Jalen noticed the way she glanced at shadows, the way her fingers hovered near her waist as if remembering where her weapon used to rest. It wasn't fear. It was readiness. Near the center of the district, they reached a sealed structure half covered in vines and dust. Senya scanned her wrist over the lock, and the door opened with a soft hiss. Inside was darker than expected, lit only by strands of bioluminescent thread lining the walls. The room pulsed faintly, like something living was just beneath the surface. This used to be a control node, she said. Long before the war ended, it connected to the defense systems across this region. Jalen stepped carefully, glancing around. Is it still active? It shouldn't be. She paused. But something's stirring it awake. In the center of the room stood a pedestal with a floating display. It showed patterns, flickers of light moving in loops too smooth to be natural. As they watched, a symbol appeared, a forgotten seal from the early resistance days. Senya stared at it. This system was shut down years ago. Then who turned it back on? Jalen asked. Before she could answer, the room dimmed. A quiet alarm buzzed low and distant like a memory resurfacing. The display shifted, showing heat signatures moving. Small, fast, untagged. Not soldiers, not drones. Senya's hand moved instinctively to her side again. We need to leave. Now. They exited quickly, but not in panic. Outside, the wind felt different, sharper, urgent. A message flashed on Senya's device. Unauthorized transmission detected near the district's main relay. Something was being sent, or called, back. At the command center, teams worked to decode the signal. Jalen watched from a side terminal, feeling helpless but alert. He wasn't part of the chain of command, but his presence mattered now. He had seen the patterns, felt the shift. And so had she. When the signal was finally decoded, it told a strange truth. The transmission hadn't come from an enemy faction. It hadn't come from a person at all. It had been generated by the old defense system itself, triggered by biometric recognition, specifically by Senya. Jalen stared at the screen. You activated it. I didn't mean to, she said, her voice low. Maybe it recognized me. From before. I used to live here. The pieces began to fall into place. The system, thought dead, had latched onto old memories buried deep in the planet's network. The return of someone who once lived and almost died here had stirred it. Not an attack. A reaction. A response to life returning where only ash had remained. So what do we do? Jalen asked. Senya looked at the screen. We talked to it. With help from the tech team, she sent a simple message through the ancient network. A greeting. A sign of peace. The pulsing slowed. The lights softened. Then the system shut down on its own, like it had been waiting for her voice. Later that evening, they stood again on the garden dome. The sun was setting behind the mountains, casting golden light across the rooftops. The city breathed easier. You saved it, Jalen said. Senya shook her head. I reminded it what peace looked like. He smiled. And to think I used to call myself the hero. She gave him a look, almost amused. You were, but peace isn't just about saving someone once. It's about showing up again and again, even when it's hard. They stood there for a long time, quiet, watching the stars appear one by one in the sky above. And beneath their feet the city kept glowing, not with fire, but with something else. Something alive. Something that had survived.